As you know, on GB News, we have spoken night after night to Vicky Spitt, Charlotte Wright, Joe Ward, Kelly Hatfield, Tony Shingler, Alex Mitchell, Howard Griffith, Jules Sirkin, Claire Hibbs, Martin Brighty, Virginia Lamb, Adrian Walker. We say their names and we say them over and over because they're real people, and they're a small sampling of your fellow citizens who have been chronically injured, widowed, or otherwise damaged by the COVID vaccines. I believe 9 persons so far, just 9 since last week, have been told by the government, since the government conceded that these things can kill you and injure you. Just 9 people so far have been told that they will receive compensation. That's Vicky, Joe, Kelly, Tony, handful of others. Why is this the state's responsibility? Because there was unprecedented pressure from the Queen down to take these vaccines. Now, I will grant Boris Johnson this, say what you will about him, but he is nowhere near the cloying, sanctimonious prat that Her Majesty's Canadian Prime Minister is.
We all know people who are a little bit hesitant. We will continue to try to convince them. But there are also people who are fiercely against vaccination, who don't believe in science. They're often misogynists, also often racists.
I see. I don't often give medical advice, but I will today. Are you a racist? Are you a misogynist? You look a bit like one, to be honest. So you're probably thinking, well, I'll get a couple of shots of the Pfizer, maybe a booster from Moderna, and then the racism will wear off and I can get my misogyny down to manageable levels. Actually, there's not a lot of science behind that, despite the Canadian Prime Minister's words. You can take the shots, and you might find yourself with myocarditis, Guillain-Barré syndrome, reduced sperm count, and worst of all, you're still exactly as racist as you were a month ago. Justin Trudeau, for example, is quadruple jabbed, and he still likes to dress up in blackface once the front door closes. Yeah, that's his famous impression of Gary Lineker hosting Match of the Day at the World Cup in Qatar. Kills them every time at the G7. It is Canada's, let me work this out, 155th birthday tomorrow. I think I got that right. Dominion Day 1867. Yeah, 155. So I thought we'd have a Canadian vaccine victim, just another one of Justin's racists and misogynists. Well, she's actually a woman and an Ojibwa native who lives on the Black River Reserve in Manitoba. So she makes an unlikely white supremacist male chauvinist, but she's no longer on board with these vaccines. Cyara Bird is 25, and this is the current state of her liver here. If you look at this, you can see the words there on the foot of the screen. A woman's liver is usually 7 centimeters long. Cyara's is presently 19.5 centimeters long. That's almost 3 times the length it's meant to be. Cyara Bird joins me now. Cyara, you've had a whole bunch of terrible after effects from the vaccine. Do you want to just summarize? I mean, the liver is the most obvious thing. It's 3 times as big as it should be. What are the other problems you've had?
Oh, there's been so many. What started it off was a sudden and extreme weight loss. I lost about 100 pounds in 3 months with no explanation, which for a person my size, the doctors say, good on you, you've lost weight, you're working on your obesity. But then in January, right before I actually contracted COVID, I started throwing up blood. And I went to the hospital and they kept demanding that I take a COVID test. And I told them, no, you're not giving me a COVID test. I know that this isn't COVID. I feel it within my guts. I don't feel this in my respiratory system at all. No, I don't consent to that. And they were reluctant to give me treatment. So they sent me home while I was throwing up blood. Once they sent me home, they'd actually sent off requisition for me to get an ultrasound done, and that was completed a couple weeks later, and that's when we saw the size of my liver. But there was other symptoms too, like cognitive degeneration. I can barely hold down a conversation now, and my ability to have a conversation and my ability to be a critical thinker has always been my bread and butter, and that's slipping from me.
Yeah, you've been a parliamentary candidate in Manitoba. So as you say, you're used to speaking and arguing and debating in public. It's not something unfamiliar to you, and you're saying now you've got these various cognitive issues that are problematic for you. I wonder, though, as a former candidate for the Conservative Party, have you found any senior figures in the Conservative Party who are interested in what's happening to vaccine victims?
I haven't really been watching it. And to be honest, if there is, they haven't been very vocal about it. There are previous members of parliament that have since retired that have been really supportive of me speaking out. But I don't really see anyone working to speak on behalf of the victims. Like, there's such a toxic presence lingering in Canada that is directly related to Trudeau. You know, he speaks such hatred into our society, and there's such division that we can't even speak out against the other side. Like, there's no way for us to defend ourselves without being called down or being scared into being silent. Like, even right now, I have anxiety, both from like the cognitive issues, like this feels like a whole new thing to me before, but I've done this before. And then also the backlash I'll face too. You know, living in Canada, there's so many people that are probably going to come at me now, but you know what? This is my truth, and I'm not scared to tell the truth anymore, because if I can at least help one other person find the courage to speak up, because I can't get myself retribution. I signed a waiver, and I signed away all their rights. They can't be held responsible. No. But if I can help somebody else, then that makes it worth it.
You're only 25, so you have your whole life ahead of you, and it looks from the consequences of these vaccines as if that life is going to be more constrained than you would have expected. It's extremely odd for a prime minister to be pushing vaccines in the first place. You know, the government is telling you you have to get this vaccine. That's what Justin Trudeau does, that's what Boris Johnson does, but that's also what Emmanuel Macron and Joe Biden have been doing. But Trudeau went further than anyone, I think, went further even than Monsieur Macron, who was very...
He went so far, and he allowed the premiers to go even further. There was a point in Manitoba where we couldn't even buy clothes for our children. Like, the restrictions were just so heavy. And then Justin Trudeau pushed the vaccines on First Nations people so much that he actually allocated funding to give to the reserves to pay us to take the vaccine. They paid me $50 to take that vaccine.
That's absolutely incredible. So you're saying that in order to make sure that First Nations, for our UK audience, is Canadian Indians and Inuit Indigenous people, and you're saying the government basically gave you $50 to get the shot.
Yeah.
That's absolutely astonishing. What do you make of his argument, though, that the people who are wary of the vaccines, you know, they might worry about myocarditis if you're a young man, and by that I mean under 30 or maybe even 40. That's a serious consideration. But his thing is, if you're opposed to the vaccines, it's because you're a racist and a sexist. There's not a lot of science behind that, is there?
Well, haven't you seen the studies? It's directly linked. I'm very obviously a racist. Can't you
well, it's
tell?
good to see you're a racist. Yeah, no, I can. It's all over your face. You're a racist, but at least you're a racist with a sense of humor about these things, which I'm not sure I'd have in your situation. Good luck to you, Cyara, and we hope that one day, I think, you know, $50 isn't enough for what that vaccine has done to you.